Hello. Okay. Ooh. Well, I guess I could try to set my volume now. That'd be good. Hmm. Where is my volume button? There's so many buttons. They don't tell you how many buttons there are. Oh, maybe it's this button. Okay. Is that louder? Is that better? Yeah, I think that's better. Okay. All right. So, how's everybody doing? Something very positive happened today. I know a lot of the people I talk to are very, very, very happy about this. Um, I'm going to show it to you in a moment as soon as I find it. Uh, but this made a lot of people very happy. You've probably seen it already, but today a toss blew up. Actually, I don't know if this is actually today, but anyway, this made a lot of people very, very happy. An attack on Kharkiv would be dumb. I still don't really want to talk about Kharkiv because I've been compiling information. I'm just not really ready to talk about it yet. There's I believe there's two divisions here on this border. There's two Russian divisions, and they are really bad. Like they're like the worst soldiers in the Russian army. There's a reason they're on this border and not doing anything actually useful. It's because if you imagine like an average Russian soldier, and then you imagine something that's like half as good as that, that's what these guys are. They're really bad. They these are like emergency type people. Like Russia doesn't want them in their combat. It'd be real bad. Yeah, it's the George Carlin formula. Yeah, they're just imagine how bad the average Russian soldier is. Like when they just kind of like walk aimlessly in the combat and then immediately die. Like those guys make these guys look like geniuses. That's what we're talking about. There's a reason that they're sitting on the border. They're like digging trenches and then like filling the trenches with water. That's their job. And then they like cut down some trees and stuff. Man, it's I their whole trench thing is weird in Russia. But anyway, um, it's kind of like a moat. I can't remember the Russian word for it, but it's like a traditional Russian defensive thing where they like cut down trees in a line, and then I think they face the trees towards the enemy, and then they put like a ditch and they fill the ditch with water, and then so like the enemy has to like run over trees and then like go through a water ditch to fight you. Like I don't know, it's like a it's it's their like traditional Russian fortification. They've been doing it for like hundreds of years. I think it made more sense back when people had horses, but now they have tanks. I don't think it matters as much anymore. But anyways, so I'm still waiting for some people to join. But anyways, the just generally speaking, I'll do a quick overview before I actually get into it. In the past few days, like the past 4 days, Russia has been claiming some of the gray area around Vuhledar and Orkiv. This doesn't really matter, but they are. The more important part is up here where they're kind of pushing north. But even this is kind of irrelevant. Like none of this actually matters. It's just a thing that happened. Ukraine did a counterattack in Vuhledar, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I don't actually have that much information, but they did a counterattack, and um, this isn't really a thing that happened recently. I just never had information from here, so I marked that Russia controls that town. But I kind of thought they did. This was all just a gray area because I really get almost no information from there. Ukraine did a counterattack near Ivanivske. They did multiple counterattacks in Bakhmut itself. Russia has taken a whole bunch of ground, and there's these kind of small advances. This one here, actually, I should move this arrow because they're not attacking there. They're attacking here. This advance here is one of the more important advances at the moment. And then there is the Kreminna area, which is really the most important place in the whole country right now. But that's the overview. That's like all the stuff I'm gonna talk about today. Uh, and good afternoon, New Zealand. I'm gonna play the little happy video again because this video made like a lot of people really happy. uh, it's just a really happy sight seeing a toss explode. Uh, it's extremely important to kill toss because they are very deadly weapons, and every time they explode, it makes everybody happy. It makes everybody happy. So I know I have friends who say that they really fear two Russian weapons. They fear the TOS and they fear the S-300, and everything else is kind of, you know. TOS is a here I'll get a picture. Um, it's a thermobaric uh like MLRS. It shoots thermobaric bombs basically. They make big booms. It's a short range system. It has its range is I think like 4 or 6 kilometers or something like that. It's very short range. The reason it's short range is because these rockets it fires are extremely heavy. So they just can't go very far because they're so heavy. They're so full of boom that they can't go very far. But they make a big boom. And they're very scary. They're very deadly. They excel at destroying fortified structures. Basically, the more indoors you are, the more dead you're going to be. Yeah, I have some other angles too. I think I think this is the same explosion. Yeah, the explosions are very effective. They're very deadly. And then the other weapon that Ukrainians fear a lot is the like 240 millimeter mortar. But yeah, I got a lot of messages today about this blowing up. And I think yeah, that's the same video again. But really one of the things to keep in mind about the toss is that it is a it's a I don't know what words to use this. I'm not good at military words, but it's a weapon that you that's very like it's very high up in the military chain. So it takes like I don't know how to describe it. Uh, anyway, it's only used where it's of vital military importance. That's really kind of the point. So a toss being in Vuhledar just shows how important Vuhledar is to the Russian army, and a toss blowing up in Vuhledar is really bad for Russia. I'm gonna zoom in so this is easier to read. I think uh, that should be easier to read. But anyways, I guess I'll just start in Vuhledar because we're here and we're talking about it already. Um, Ukraine did a counterattack recently, um, where they pushed kind of this way and then kind of down this way. And the second part of the push, I'm gonna make it kind of like a dotted line. This was uh like recon, and this main push was like an actual push. So basically what they did is I can get rid of this arrow because Russia's not attacking there anymore. But Ukraine pushed Russia back this way, back to here, basically. They pushed them back to like there, and then they attacked this way without really. They didn't really penetrate. Uh, it's kind of more like that, but they pushed Russia back to like this point here, and more importantly, they penetrated the Russian lines, and they got a whole bunch of people back here doing some funny business, as special forces type people do. And as a result, um, some things have happened. Um, anyway, as a result, some things have happened. Namely, the Russian commander in this area died in a HIMARS strike, which may or may not be connected to these recon elements penetrating the Russian line. It may just be a coincidence, but it is roughly timed that it would be connected somehow, maybe. Uh, there's also been a number of artillery strikes in these kind of three towns. Ukraine has been doing a ton of damage there, and also basically they've been hitting like all four of these towns, hitting them all with like lots of artillery, and they've also been hitting Yehorivka and here. So these are kind of all the major targets. But these four in particular in this box have been getting hit heavily with Ukrainian artillery. And the reason why is that Russia has been using these buildings. They've been using like these two buildings were used as like a Russian base, and they were completely demolished. And then they have like similar buildings in this town and similar buildings in this town, where basically all three of these towns are 100% Russian. Like all of the like native people, like I think they're all gone. I'm pretty sure there's nobody left. So like every house here, like Russians live in it. It's like these are like military bases basically. So and they've been feeding forces north into the Vuhledar area. So hitting them is obviously something you would do. And then Then there was around in Yehorivka, I believe, is where that commander was killed, which was funny because the Russians said, "Yeah, you killed our commander, but jokes on you, we had two." Like, okay, okay, you had two commanders, and one of them's dead apparently. So anyway, it shows you how much they trust their commanders. Anyway, so that's more or less what is happening in the Vuhledar area. There's lots of heavy artillery. Someone mentioned whether Pavlovka is in trouble. Yeah, Pavlovka is basically entirely in Russian control, except for this northern part, which isn't. I don't even know what this is really. It's like industrial, I guess, but more or less all of Pavlovka. And I think this, I don't know what that is. I think this is like they called it like the Pavlovka dachas or something. But, but yeah, this attack in the side definitely compromised the Russian plan was more or less to move like this. And then, Ukraine did they Ukraine did one of these things. And now the Russians basically said, we're going back. And now they're kind of back at this line. So this line is more or less where the Russians are. There's really no Russians north of this, and really none west. The other thing is that Ukraine is pushing south like this, but these are again like recon units, and they also kind of push this way, but this is also recon units. They're not like, it's not like a major attack or anything, but the whole point was just to pin the Russians down in this position, which was successful. And I don't know if Constantine is coming. He might be busy at work. He didn't say anything. I messaged him like 2 hours ago, and that's that. I don't know what to say. Uh, so that's the Vuhledar area. Another thing to say about this area is that Ukraine is pumping resources into Vuhledar. They pushed artillery. They pushed like more infantry. They pushed more infantry and more infantry. Okay, so Vuhledar is heavily defended. Tons of people. So at this point, it seems extremely unlikely that Russia will ever, well, not ever, but in the near future, have success in this area. That's kind of the point. Um, Now we can move to Bakhmut. Yeah, they added another artillery brigade. Yeah, I think they actually added it like a few days ago. Like they've been there. Like they've been there. But yeah, the people were talking about it today. But I think they got there like 5 days ago or a week ago or something. But anyways, so in Bakhmut, there was a major Ukrainian counterattack that is pushing from Chasiv Yar out this way and kind of out that way too. Uh, they're pushing. The whole idea is to push Russia in this general direction, to push them away from the highway and away from Chasiv Yar. So far, they've had success in pushing Russia out of this circle. They push them back to like this circle. So that was important. Today, Russia counterattacked and they're trying to, get back in there. But from what I understand, the counterattack didn't achieve much. There's also word that Russia has entered Ivanivske. I don't know if that's true. I marked it as a gray area, but generally speaking, Ukraine launched more, even like additional counterattacks throughout Bakhmut. I can't really get into detail, but the general idea is to push this way. uh, you know, they want to reestablish some sort of presence on, kind of like that. But one interesting point that I've heard about these counterattacks is that in Bakhmut, the Ukrainians they push Russia out of a position, and they push them all the way out of that position. And as soon as they're done doing so, Ukraine retreats back to where they started. So that's an interesting that is an interesting thing that uh, the Ukraine, when they do their counterattacks, they don't necessarily want to gain ground. They more so just want to push Russia out of their defensive positions so that they either have to push back into the defensive positions or take up new defensive positions. So yeah, if you want to look at the terrain here in Chasiv Yar, there's this one key hill that we kind of talked about last time, where this is kind of the most vital hill, where there was worry of Wagner crossing this road and then getting into this valley and then trying to push up the hill. But instead, Ukraine has pushed them away from the road and through the forest, and now the forest is kind of split in half, where Ukraine controls kind of the northern part of the forest, and Wagner controls kind of the southern part. And in this forest, you see that there is a kind of a valley. I don't know what to call this, like a ravine that goes through the middle of the forest, where Ukraine kind of has this high ground now, and Russia has been having a lot of trouble crossing this canal. That's what this is, by the way. This is a canal. And so yeah, that is the terrain here. So yeah, from what I understand, Ukraine is also counterattacking kind of in this direction from Stupachki. But I don't know how much has happened of this. I know that there are videos of Ukrainian mortar strikes, like kind of in this general area. I don't think you need a pontoon to cross this. I don't know. I think I think you can just walk. I think it depends. Maybe it depends on where you are exactly, but I don't know. That seems walkable to me. What do you think? I don't know. Yeah, and you also have to imagine that I think a lot of this water is gone. Like the water level is way lower, and also whatever water is there is likely frozen. You have to keep in mind that there is a lot of There's going to be snow in the forecast this week, I believe. The forecast is 6 inches of snow this week. But yeah, I don't know how much water is in this canal. I've heard that's only like 1 or 2 feet at most, but I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like a dry moat right now because Ukraine is a very dry country, and I think this is like a particularly dry year on top of that. So it's pretty dry. It's pretty dry. Um, so that's kind of covering that covered kind of the southern part of Bakhmut, where this counterattack is super interesting, but other than that, it's kind of boring. North of Bakhmut, Ukraine has lost Krasna Hora. I don't know why they keep pretending that they haven't, but they have. And the battle in Paraskoviivka is very intense. But more important, Ukraine has lost a lot of the area around this ravine. So last week, I said the Russians had pushed up most of the way of this ravine, and I figured that they would push towards the road and then spread out. And that's more or less is what's happened. They yesterday they kind of made it to the road, and they be yesterday they made it to the road and they started spreading south into kind of this area, and now they have spread north, and they've kind of taken this entire little hill, basically all of it, all the way to this lake or pond or whatever it is, and Velizyanska, is that how you say it? Anyway, so yeah, this area around Blahodatne, uh, this was all kind of easy to forecast that Russia would take all of this ground. What they do from here is kind of the bigger question, because this is really the biggest question mark in Bakhmut, is whether Ukraine can constrain this advance. Crossing the highway, I think, is easier said than done. I think Ukraine has decent defenses on this western or southern, I don't know, what would you call this? Those western side of the highway, I think they have good defenses. This northern part, I don't know. I don't know about these defenses to the north, and it starts to get worrying. This is kind of the biggest worry, is that they are attacking Siversk, which this is kind of all playing out how Ukraine thought it would play out. And there were kind of doubts at some point, was because if you remember, if you go back, I said that Russia would try to attack Chasiv Yar, fail, and then pivot to Siversk. That was always kind of the what Ukraine thought Russia would do. And now we're kind of at that point where they've bounced off Chasiv Yar, and there's now a big push into towards Siversk. This kind of approach northwest up this highway is obviously an attempt to cut off Siversk. Obviously, Russia has a long way to go to get to that point, but that's kind of obviously the goal, is to push up this highway and cut off Siversk. The other thing that is happening right now is that Russia has thrust forward they're thrusting forward here between Vasile and Razdolivka. They're thrusting. They want to kind of penetrate north. And the goal here is kind of twofold. First, they just generally speaking want to attack Siversk, but also they want to kind of get behind the Ukrainian defenses that are holding here and here. So this attack is actually really important. It's really important to keep your eye on this thrust and on Siversk in general. Which towns are defending Siversk? Basically all of them. Sperna is one of the big defensive positions that Russia has not been able to successfully attack. And then there's Avdiivka, which is incredibly important. There's Razdolivka and Fedorivka and Vasiukivka, which are kind of these three towns kind of defend each other. They're super important. There's Verkho-Kamyanska, which is super important. So these are kind of the main line defense, and then to a lesser extent, there's Bilohorivka and Serebrenka. And then but these are kind of the main defense, and then behind it, Ivanivske is super heavily defended. And Siversk itself has been turned into a fortress. It's actually similarly defended as Bakhmut. So it's super defended on its own, and all these other towns are defending it as well. So so yeah, that is the kind of I don't know, do you should I do you have any questions about this area? Uh because I'm kind of getting to the point that I want to make today soon. um and I'm just curious if there's any questions you have about Bakhmut and Vuhledar first. Um I'll take that as a no. Okay. So now this is kind of this is getting into kind of my message for today is um, do I think Bilohorivka will stand despite the intensity of their attacks? I mean, I don't know. Bilohorivka is in a dangerous spot. The main thing about Bilohorivka is it's so important to Ukraine, and I don't think it's as important to Russia. So Ukraine, I think, has more incentive to defend it than Russia has to attack it, and for that reason alone, Ukraine might keep it because it's so important for them to have an anchor that defends these river crossings to the west, and also it kind of gives them a shot at attacking Lysychansk, although not necessarily Lysychansk itself, but this all kind of Lysychansk area. You need Bilohorivka to do that, even though Bilohorivka can't, it itself cannot attack any of these places because of just the terrain. It's Bilohorivka is like a really bad position, but it can be it anchors other movements. So it gives Ukraine the ability to do other things later. But yeah, it's just it's a terrible place. It's like because you're at the bottom of all of these hills. So Russia can like put tanks on these hills, and you see this like white line here. Like this white line is like the road into Bilohorivka. So you can kind of like put tanks here and just shoot up that road all day long. Um, so, and then similarly, you know, Russia has kind of this high ground shooting down on it. So there's just a terrain wise, it's terrible, but its position is super important because like if Ukraine ever gets the chance to move out of Sperna, because you look at like how close Sperna is to the peak of this hill, like this is the top of the hill right here, and if Ukraine ever gets to this position, then they could make a legitimate attack on Verkno and if you get Verkno and you have Bilohorivka, then you can launch, you know, legitimate attacks on all of these other areas. It's just that getting to Verkno is really difficult, and Sperna is the easiest way to do it, and Bilohorivka kind of because if Russia had Bilohorivka, it just makes all of this harder because Russia would then be pushing down the river, and then you'd have to divert your forces to there, and it just makes it harder. So, um, yeah, Lysychansk has defenses in the south. The main defenses are in Kharkiv and Zolote. These are the main defenses. Um, and there's also where is that town? Mykolaiivka. So there's Mykolaiivka and Herska and Zolote. These are kind of the major defenses. You have to keep in mind that like Zubivka doesn't exist anymore. It's been like kind of deleted from the map, and also like all these other towns like over here like Bilohora and like all these towns are deleted. Like Tashkivka is like none of these towns exist anymore. They're all just craters. So uh, anyway, so moving on to the Kreminna area. This is really bad. Kreminna is really bad for Ukraine. Like this is it's not good. Um, Russia is pushing towards Terney and Torska, and they're pushing towards Nevska and Makivka. But the issue here is that Russia very, very heavily outnumbers Ukraine. Um, the Russian forces in the Kreminna area heavily outnumber Ukraine. It's more than 7-1. Um, they outnumber Ukraine in infantry. They outnumber Ukraine in artillery. They outnumber Ukraine in air support. It's actually pretty bad. This whole situation is not good. Um, in short, one of the reasons Ukraine is having a bad time here is that they shifted forces from Siversk down to Vuhledar, and they've also shifted forces to Vuhledar. So that and the forces they shifted were mainly artillery. So Ukraine shifted artillery out of Siversk into Vuhledar, and as a result, Serebryanka got just absolutely shellacked with Russian artillery. Just tons of Russian artillery have been hitting this town a lot. Like it's done a lot of damage. Um, Siversk, I believe, has also been hitting by more artillery. Um, there's also more forces were sent to Vuhledar, as like a brigade was sent here. the Vuhledar. They sent a brigade here, and that brigade is can no longer support Kreminna because they're now supporting Vuhledar. So that's one reason that Kreminna is in trouble. Another reason is that Russia has been pumping forces here with the goal of capturing Liman. So Russia has been adding and adding and adding. Ukraine has been sort of subtracting. You could argue that they haven't subtracted, but they definitely haven't been adding. Should I be banning people? I haven't really been looking at the chat, honestly. Uh, okay. Let's take a timeout to ban people, I guess. Hey. Okay. 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 Is everybody behaving themselves now? Now I had to take my pause to like ban people. Okay. So anyway, I don't listen to what Chuck says. I don't. Okay, I'm not. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So leaving Chuck out of it. Um. Okay. So anyway, so what was I saying? They, Russia has been pushing forces into Kreminna. They heavily outnumber Ukraine. They outnumber them more than 7-1. And they are right now they're really pushing towards Terni and towards Torsk. And in the long term, their goal is Liman. Um, is their movement threatening? Yes, it is threatening. Um, One of the main reasons it is so threatening is because they just so heavily outnumber the Ukrainians. Um, I will say that from all of the sources I have in this area, Russia has been taking pretty serious casualties in these attacks, and the attacks thus far have not gone very far. So, in that sense, to date, it's not super important. Like, they haven't gotten the Terni yet. They haven't gotten the Torska yet. They haven't pushed, down to the Siversk Donetsk River. They haven't gotten to Nevsky yet. Okay, they haven't gotten to these places yet. But the yet is the issue. It hasn't happened yet, but it could happen soon. In one sense, you could say that the Ukrainian offensive was overly successful. It was more successful than they thought it would be because Ukraine pushed to this Oskil River, and then they crossed the Oskil River, and then they pushed to the Zverbets River, or whatever it's called, and then they crossed that river too. So they crossed two rivers to get into this position that they're in now. And now it seems that Russia wants to at least push Ukraine back across one of these rivers, and really their goal is to push him back over both rivers. But I don't think that's realistic. But they could very realistically capture Torska and capture Terny and capture Makivka and Nevska. They could capture all of these towns along this river. And that in itself would not be the end of the world. It would make any future Ukrainian offensives more difficult because they would have to cross the river again. But the real threat is that they will keep trying to push. They'll probably push south towards Yampol and then up to Liman again. So this is kind of the main threat. Taking Liman and taking Siversk. And at this point, Bakhmut has been heavily reinforced by Ukraine. Very heavily reinforced. Bakhmut is under no real immediate threat. The threat, it could develop over the course of a few weeks. But when I woke up this morning, I had people asking me if Bakhmut fell last night. That's ridiculous. Bakhmut did not fall last night. Okay, so Bakhmut is not under immediate threat. The threat could be in 2 weeks, in a month, or something. Things can change. But right now, Bakhmut is under no immediate threat. And even Wagner, even Perozhin came out and said Bakhmut is under no immediate threat. Even the Russians say it. Okay, it's not like hopium. It's just fact. It's not under immediate threat. Vuhledar, similarly, under no realistic threat. But Siversk is under a real threat. It's not a threat that would happen tomorrow. Like, it's not going to collapse over the weekend or something. But it's under attack from every angle simultaneously. And similarly, the forces in Kreminna are pushing west against an numerically inferior Ukrainian force. Although the Ukrainians are, at the moment, giving the Russians a lot of casualties. So this is kind of my message today, is that stop focusing so much on Bakhmut. Stop focusing so much on Vuhledar. And focus on Siversk and Liman. These are the keys. These are really important. One important vector is this attack between Paraskoviivka and Vasily. Another important vector is this push north from Zalesnyanska. And then, to a lesser extent, this push towards Avdiivka, which, if it were successful, would be important, but it's very unlikely to be successful. But these are the attacks you should keep your eye on. Not really Bakhmut. I heard rumors today that the Russians entered Ivanivske. I don't actually know if it's true. And I believe if they did enter it, it would be like these outskirts, I think. I don't think it would be the town itself. I think it would, like, maybe these buildings, But the terrain around Siversk is this is the wrong app. Okay, so here's the right app. it's very hilly. There's lots of hills. Siversk is kind of the low ground. Um, so uh, the river um, is really high up. Like there's hills around this river that are pretty high, and then it's just hilly. It's just generally hilly. Um, so yeah, that is the terrain around Siversk. I think it kind of speaks for itself. There's lots of hills. Um, I know that. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, Ukraine doesn't really strive to outnumber Russia unless they're attacking. Ukraine is kind of they their goal is tends to be they want to defend with as few people as possible. So they don't really just dump bodies. Um, if you think about it, like I don't know the exact numbers, but I think Ukraine has like 30 brigades in combat and like 50 in reserve. So like they tend to have Ukraine tends to have a larger fraction of their forces not in combat than Russia does. Russia tends to have more of their forces in combat. And it makes sense because they're the ones attacking usually. Um, you need you need more people to attack. So you like generally speaking, from what I understand, for Russia to have the force ratio that they need in Vuhledar to successfully attack it, they would need about 2 to 3 times more troops than they have already. Um, Similarly, in Bakhmut, they would need probably 2 to 3 times more than they have already. So Ukraine has enough troops in these two locations that it makes it very unrealistic for Russia to successfully attack. But they are also using as few troops as they can get away with to do that. Hey, thank you for subscribing. So, anyways, that was my message. I have another thing that I forgot to say before about Vuhledar. We were talking about how the TOS has a very short range. The TOS thermobaric rocket launcher has a range of like 4 kilometers or 8 or 6 or something like that. It's like 4 to 6 kilometers, something like that. And we've seen all of these videos of Ukrainian. We've seen all these videos of the Russian forces crashing into minefields, right? So I just want you to keep in mind that the the way that Ukraine is laying those mines is actually a very short range weapon. I believe it's only about 8 kilometer range. So it's actually around the range of a mortar. So these minefields that they are laying in in these open positions are coming actually from very short distances away. So you have to keep in mind what that means that Ukraine is capable of firing these mortars from such short ranges. Why isn't Russia doing counter battery fire? Just ask yourself that. Why aren't they using counter battery fire? 'Cause I don't really have an answer to that, but it's an interesting problem. It's an interesting thing to think about because it takes about an hour to lay a minefield, and it's very dangerous for the crewmen to lay that minefield. So, in that hour, when Ukraine is very, very vulnerable, somehow Russia is failing to shoot them. It's kind of weird. Think about it. If you're watching from Kiev, dude, you have like my sleep schedule if you're watching from Kiev. Seriously, I I go to sleep at like 5 a.m. too, man. Okay, so that's more or less all I had to say today. I can't remember if there were interesting missile strikes. Oh, there were interesting missile strikes. There were a missile strike on Tokmak today where they blew up a ammo depot. There was another missile strike on Molochansk, which they've been missiling a lot lately. I don't know what that hit. And there were a few missile strikes in Konstantinivka. There was a missile strike in Kramatorsk. Um, yeah, these were rocket strikes. There was a rocket strike in Berislav where they blew up like a hospital. There was a rocket strike in Kherson where I think they blew up another hospital, and a rocket strike in uh, Okakiv. Um, and yesterday they kind of hit the same sort of places. They hit Tokmak and Molochansk, and so they've been Ukraine has been hitting the same sort of towns like over and over again with their kind of deep strikes, because these are all kind of HIMARS strikes, and um, this is not common for me, but I actually got the exact GPS coordinates of all these HIMARS strikes. I don't always get that, so these are exactly where they landed yesterday. Like today, I did not get that, but yesterday I did, and it was cool. But yeah, there there was supposedly, I think it's been confirmed, but I'll just say supposedly. There was supposedly a a sort of sneak attack on a Wagner base in Bakhmut. I don't actually know where, but they basically snuck five guys into a position. They waited for the Russians to come in and get nice and comfortable. And when they let their guard down, the Ukrainians popped out and shot them all. Um, yeah, so that is a thing that supposedly happened in Bakhmut. I think they said they killed like 19 and wounded like a 20 or something, and captured like three or something like that. Uh, yeah. I have no news about Novoselivska or Kuzimivka. The news about Dvorichne, um, basically Russia took control of this forest, and this happened on the 10th, so that was like 4 days ago. So they took control of this forest, and now they are trying to cross this train track and attack uh, Hryanykivka. Um, this train track is heavily defended all the way down. Ukraine used to hold the northern part of this train track, which is this whole kind of red area, but they lost it on the 10th. Russia had pushed through. This is kind of like the train station. They kind of pushed through the train station into the forest and captured the forest. And when they did that, they more or less took control of this whole section of the train track. So that's more or less what's happening here. Nothing has changed since the 10th. It's been pretty stable. No, this town is not a gray area. Um, Ukraine has fortified this train track. This train track is a fortified position. They're defending attacks from the east on this train track. So this town is not a gray area. It is a fortified position. In the Avdiivka front, there was a catastrophic Russian attack near Kamyanka and Krasnohorivka. A total catastrophe for the Russians. They lost dozens of vehicles. Um, I don't know how many men. I heard it was one or two entire companies of infantry died, and all of their vehicles. And I think it was a tank company on top of that, and all of their vehicles. So it was a total catastrophe. Russia got their butts kicked. Other than that, not much is happening here. I noted this Russian control, but this Russian control is not a change. It's just I I had it as a gray area before because I didn't know, but now it's kind of confirmed. And they've been attacking Pervomaisky, where they've been attacking a little bit from the south, but mostly from the east. Um, they tried a breakthrough in Pervomaisky, and it failed miserably. Um, but other than that, that's pretty much the Avdiivka area. Um, just Russians taking catastrophic casualties. They tried to attack Avdiivka from the south. They took catastrophic losses. They tried to attack it from the east, and they took catastrophic losses. So, and then they also took catastrophic losses in Bodiana. Like in the past, since the beginning of the year, I have seen confirmed, I think, over 100 armored vehicles lost since like January 1st in just Vodiana and Avdiivka. Just like 100, I think, around 100 at least. Because they lost like 17 in Vodiana, they lost like 30 something in Avdiivka, and then they lost like 40 or so here. So it's been a bunch. It's been bad. It's been bad. Uh, this Krasnohorivka, they've also attacked, but not to the extent like this attack in Krasnohorivka is just kind of like shooting machine guns at each other kind of attack. Whereas the attack on the other Krasnohorivka was like an actual like get in the tanks and try to storm it attack, and it failed. Um, so it's really annoying that there's two Krasnohorivkas right next to each other though. But that's Ukraine. This attack west of Blahodatne, I think it can be stabilized. I I I don't think Russia is going to be able to cross this highway very easily. I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't think they will easily. They might, but not. It would be with great difficulty to attack the crosses, and I don't know where this line will stabilize. But I figure at some point this will stabilize. So I like it could be like maybe Russia will end up like this. I don't know, and maybe like that. Control it. But I think that there will be a stabilization point. I just we're not there yet. Yeah, the 800. Well, I don't know if that number is killed in action. I really think it's casualties, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't really pay much attention to that number. I don't I don't really treat it as a gospel or anything. So yeah, um that is the news for today. That's more or less it. And to boil it down into very short, um, Russia's attack in Kreminna is bad for Ukraine. Russia's attack in Siversk is very important, and the attacks in Bakhmut and Vuhledar don't really matter that much. If Ukraine can hold on, and you have to keep in mind they are outnumbered worse than 7-1. 7-1 would be optimistic. Okay, so they're outnumbered worse than 7-1. If they can hold on with that ratio, that would mean Russia really took an ass beating. That's what that means. Is Russia took a lot of damage. It would be impressive. Yeah, well, you can't defending 7-1. Like you can't. You don't defend 7-1. Like you could defend like 4-1. Okay, so anyways, that's more or less all I have to say today. I don't really have anything else to say. Uh, why are the numbers so lopsided? It's Bakhmut. I think Bakhmut is over defended, and I think that's why Kreminna is so lopsided. Bakhmut, Ukraine has put a lot of resources into Bakhmut. Um, and then that's kind of it. I don't have anything to say about Moldova. I don't really pay attention to Moldova. I I listened to I mean I read some of the stuff about them wanting to like overthrow the government or like the theories around that. But I don't really know anything about Moldova. I don't really have anything to say. I know that Transnistria isn't gonna last much longer. it's it's gonna die soon. It's gonna become just Moldova. But other than that, um, if really what I'm trying to say when I say Bakhmut is over defended, I'm really saying that Bakhmut is very likely become a political thing where they're expending resources for the sake of politics. Um, whereas the military move would be to put forces in near Kreminna, but instead they're putting them in Bakhmut, and that's just kind of the way it is. I don't, I don't know what else to say. Yeah, that ammo depot in Transnistria. I don't know if the ammo is even good anymore. Like the ammo might not even be usable. It might just actually just be a big bomb. It might be less ammo and more bomb. Also, from what I understand, all of the Russian forces that were in Transnistria, um, I read this a while ago. It might not actually be true, but I read it a while ago. They said that they were under contract and their contract expired, and Russia asked them to sign a new contract, and all of them said no. So, like, they don't even have like forces there anymore. They all quit. uh, that's what I read a while ago. I don't know if it's true, but it's funny though. But anyways, that's all I have to say today. So I'm gonna stop the stream. Thank you everybody for coming. And I'll talk to you on Thursday, and maybe Constantine will be here. Constantine messaged me. He said that he was cleaning his garage and forgot. So it happens. Anyway, see you later.